welcome to ET Auto in this very special session where we are going to talk about how startups are disrupting the entire journey in the automobile industry. Now, the year 2021 was a watershed year for the startup ecosystem in India in general. Private investors committed close to about 30 billion in homegrown startups in that year alone. Add venture capital investments in the mix, and the overall investment activity more than doubled, reaching an all-time high of nearly $63 billion. All this meant that a record number of unicorns were formed. As many as 46 startups achieved that status in the year alone, more than doubling the tally to over 90. India now has the distinction of being the third largest unicorn hub in the world after the US and China. Now, one of the significant breeding grounds for startups is obviously the transport and mobility industry. The automobile industry is at the cusp of major changes as the future of the industry lies in connected, autonomous, shared, and electric mobility technologies. It is a difficult transition, but one that presents almost a blank canvas for all sorts of innovations, and startups are leading the charge here. As part of our Future of Mobility series, we will be discussing in some detail the disruption that startups are causing in the sector, and through that, how they are becoming the axis of new age mobility. We are joined by three very prominent startups that cater to different facets of the business. And it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Karthik Haryani, the founder and CEO of ChargeZone. Welcome, Karthik. We also have Mr. Ravi Kiran Annaswamy, the co-founder and CEO of Numocity Technologies, and Mr. Puneet Goel, the co-founder of Blue Smart Mobility. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to ET Auto. Now, to start off with, I will start with Karthike. We generally have a sense that startups are disrupting a lot of industries. Give me your thoughts on how you are trying to disrupt and bring about some change in the way in the business that you operate in.
Right. No, I think, Sumant, it's very clear that the world of startups, not only in India, but globally, has created a huge impact in the traditional industries, as well as it is introducing some new age industries such as electric mobility. Now, as ChargeZone, what as a journey that we started 3 years ago, it was not about disrupting any existing industries per se, because e-mobility from scratch, it has been a completely new phase to the way people are going to or have been traveling or will travel in future. Plus, e-mobility, in a sense, has also disrupted the traditional IC engine vehicles, which has run on petrol and diesel and so on. Now, all along ChargeZone and our peers, and my colleagues on the panel as well, I focus on one thing: is how do we create the opportunities using tech piece, using the resources and talent pool, and obviously the availability of capital, which was not the case earlier, let's say even a decade ago, has come to a significant help and support to experimenting the new business ideas and converting ideas into those practical business models. So yes, I'm pretty myself privileged, to be part of this journey, because as an entrepreneur, I've seen both the worlds. A decade ago, which was very traditional entrepreneurial, and a new age one, which is strongly supported by various startup ecosystem stakeholders.
Right. Ravi, let me come to you. Generally, we have seen that startups try to address some of these unaddressed issues that consumers face. And typically, legacy companies never look at it because they're too caught up in the grind of the brick and mortar businesses, and which is what the blind spots that startups identify. What are you doing at Numocity Technologies? What is the kind of greater efficiency, if that be, that you are bringing to the table?
Thanks, Suman. Hello to everyone. Our hypothesis from the beginning as a startup is that we need to go behind a problem which we want to solve, and we are happy and comfortable solving that problem. So what we noticed is when we look at e-mobility or any new industry, in this case, there are 4 pillars which we always strongly believe in. One is the vehicles will change because of e-mobility, whether it's the motor, the battery, whatever happens. The grid will have to get ready to fuel these vehicles. We also noticed 2 things very early on, that all of this will going to be connected. I think you also mentioned about CASC, connected, autonomous, and electric. So here we are looking at everything will be connected. But our hypothesis and the problem we wanted to address is we looked at it from the angle of the software, the systems, and the data, because that's the fourth pillar which will actually enable and ensure a lot of things, a lot of business models, or a lot of business workflows to work. So that's where we started looking at as a problem space or an opportunity space where we wanted to make a difference or make a change. Happy to say that we have seen over the years that as a company, we kept our focus on energy value chain. We looked at specific things of how energy will move across all these segments and software systems which are required for making this happen. So our value in the market, or what we help our customers, is to build infrastructure of their own, energy infrastructure. But how do they make this infrastructure available to drivers? How do they ensure that they are operational all the time to keep the operational efficiency? How do they monetize all this energy? How do they make their money? And at the same time, how do they ensure that their infrastructure, what they have built, has a total cost of ownership, which is very good with a return of investment in the next X years based on each one of them. So we enable with systems which kind of helps all these micro entrepreneurs and small medium entrepreneurs to build their infrastructure. And in that way, we are kind of helping democratizing a lot of smaller players to come up who can build the infrastructure and help them to do it. And that's been our beginning and the SaaS story. Market will evolve, we will evolve, but that's where we are right now.
Great. So you have given me the absolutely exactly the cue that I wanted to bring Puneet in, because while Charge Zone and Nemocity, you are working on the infrastructure side. Puneet is probably a client for you, because he is putting in all these electric vehicles on the road. He was telling me that he already has about more than 1,800 vehicles on the road now. These are the drivers who need these charging solutions and the software services that you are providing. So Puneet, if you can come in and tell us about your journey into the electric vehicle space, and what prompted you to get into EVs at a time when everybody was a little more skeptical.
Hi, Sumant. So we've been doing a lot of research over the last 3-4 years before we founded Blue Smart, and we thought that there's a huge opportunity to decarbonize mobility in India. Our competition, which is out there, was not really doing something about EVs. And since me and my co-founder, we have been in the renewable space over the last 10 years, we thought that EVs are great for the people, they're great for the environment, and they're great for everybody's prosperity, for the riders, for the consumers, and for the communities we serve. And we thought if we use EVs, we'll be able to address two challenges. The first one being obviously on the unit economic side, because EVs have a lower total cost of ownership. So you can run a profitable ride-hailing fleet. So that's a huge advantage on the business side. On the second part, we thought that while we build India's largest electric ride-hailing service, we'll also address the challenge of pollution. Now, if you see, Delhi NCR has got an AQI of more than 200, north of 200 throughout the year. And during the winter season, the air quality index is like north of 400, which is like really, really bad. If you see AQI of London is 2, AQI of Western cities like New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco is 45. So we see that increasingly with each passing year, the air quality is getting, is worsening with each passing year, and nobody's doing anything about it. So we thought that if we address the pollution challenge, and with ride-hailing service, public transportation platform, and we fundamentally believe that all public transportation platforms will eventually become electric going forward. So we thought at Blue Smart, let's address two major challenges for the economy, which is decarbonizing mobility. 28% of all the greenhouse gas emissions or all the pollution in Delhi NCR is because of transportation. And transportation is the single largest contributor even in the West. We were doing a lot of research and we found that even in California, 40% of all the greenhouse gas emissions because of transportation. So if transportation shifts to electric, it'll be great for the economy. The health of people will improve in mega cities of India and also overseas. And obviously, EVs have a huge advantage of lower total cost of operations and lower fuel cost. India also imports billions of dollars of oil. Our import oil bill is $60 billion circa of 2017-18. And if you see in 2022, our FM said that the oil import bill of India is $100 billion. So despite the pandemic, there was an increase of 40% on the oil import bill. And that's only going to go north. So we fundamentally believe that Blue Smart has a big role and big opportunity to decarbonize mobility and maybe inspire other ride-hailing platforms or other mobility platforms to also go electric.
Obviously, cleaning up our planet, making air healthy, and at the same time, a a good business. What can be better than this? One of the challenges that most startups face is how do you convince your investors when you go to them? Obviously, you are starting afresh, and investors could be a little skeptical about whatever plans that you might have. Karthike, what has been your experience? How difficult was it to convince investors about what you are trying to do?
Right. I think there is a famous saying that raising the first million is far tougher than raising a billion later on. So it's clear that when you approach an investor with an idea or a business proposition, you'll get all kind of feedback in terms of the pros and cons of the idea of whether it will be workable or not. But in my personal experience, I've seen one thing for sure: an idea that disrupts the existing models, the idea that is scalable, the idea that is profitable, and at the end of the day creates or unlocks value for everybody, not just investors but all the stakeholders put together. Yep, these are some of the 2-3 pointers which any investor will have a buy-in. In our case, obviously, Charzone as an EV charging company, it is infra driven, it is tech driven, it is data driven, and finally, it's also capex driven. So while people love asset light models, for example, they say no, great. I mean, if it's capex driven, it's going to be difficult and so on. But yeah, we just today, incidentally, released our first major campaign in terms of India in Mumbai and Ahmedabad to begin with, as of one colossal initiative. It's not in terms of just engaging with the investor, but also the entire stakeholders of the EV ecosystem to come together, because EV charging need to come first before the electric vehicles come first. Right? My colleague or my peer, for example, Puneet at Blue Smart, they've been building up the entire ecosystem to begin with at Delhi NCR. Then later on, other pieces started coming together, and then the investors were more convinced than before. Maybe let's say 2 or 3 years ago, that yeah, I think the e-mobility is here to stay. So yes, the first several months, probably even years, could be extremely difficult, extremely tight. But as I said earlier, that yes, if the viability of the business and the impact that you wish to create, and finally your own intent to grow the business, I think those are the key buy-ins where the investor will come in and would like to fund you.
You already answered one of my questions, that what comes first, chicken or egg? And that is the chicken and egg analogy we always use in electric mobility. That do you set up charging stations first, but then who will charge it if there are no cars? And if there are no charging stations, who will buy those cars? So that is the kind of irony. Ravi, what has been, you are also in the space of building infrastructure. There are not that many electric vehicles on the road yet, but yes, the growth is pretty fast. I'm sure it is now easier to convince investors on the future because the writing is almost on the wall. But when you must have started, and I spoke to Puneet in 2019 when he was tying up with EESL at that time in Delhi. And a lot of people were a little more skeptical that, oh, really, petrol prices are not that high and everybody is going into CNG cabs. Why get into electric mobility? What has been your experience with your investors? Were they also a little more cynical about the prospects of your company?
Absolutely. So when we look at just a small thing, Sumant, we don't build infrastructure. So we are an asset-light company. We are only a digital platform. We are only a technology company and a software as a service company. So it becomes even more difficult for somebody to understand the business model we are operating in, because infrastructure sometimes is understood well when you're setting up systems in place, fleets in place, sometimes understood. But digital platforms are difficult to understand. What are you trying to do? Is there really a market for it? It took us some time to bring that value proposition on the table, to explain that this is something which the industry would need in X number of years. So this is a hypothesis we had way back, 4 years back, 5 years back, because as a team, we come from a strong telecom background, having rich experience building very similar infrastructure in telecom 20 years back, 15 years back. So we understood what happens. Your chicken and egg question was the same when we looked at it 20 years back to say, will the cell towers come first or the cell phones come first? Because the phones were expensive, towers were not there. When the towers came, the phones came. So we know how the game was played out at that time, and we put our hypothesis that this is how it would happen. And the need for technology and the software piece, India, when we look at building e-mobility, we should not look at it in an ad hoc way. Our approach always has been that it has to be very systemically done. And always look at the day 3 or the day 4 when you build systems now, because when you do that, you're building a very systemic infrastructure. We don't want to build a ad hoc infrastructure. And that's where our value comes in, being able to help everybody to be in a standard platform, everybody to use standards, so that when you scale, it scales rapidly. Instead of trying to do a multitude of systems, try to do a standard system. So I think there was a lot of skepticism that would there be a software player at all in this market? I think there will be fleet players, there will be infrastructure players, but who needs a software? I think we could convince and prove that it is needed. So second point always with investors is it's also about the people. They also look at not just in the early stages, not in the scale up stages, early stages, people also become important. So our understanding of the market, our understanding of bringing lateral experiences from other market, I think played a significant role, because whatever we called out 4 years back is playing out right now. So I think our investors are very happy that we could foresee some of those systems which would come in place and how it would come in place. So I think that's a main point which we brought in. And one last thing, our vision always has been that we are a made in India product for the world market. I think the market is not just India, it's global, and we want to impact everywhere in every country. I think that pitch and also how we would scale convinced a lot of people to say, yeah, this is a meaningful pitch, and also there is a business for digital platforms. If not only in India, it's across the world. Every market needs it. I think that's the pitch which we went with.
I think the fact that there is a smartphone in almost every hand, that has made the whole meaning of software a lot more tangible to consumers at large. They now understand what software does, and I think scalability is one of the strengths that people see in startups. That you're not afraid to do something which is outlandish and even ridiculous. And Puneet, I would like to bring you in here. Because scalability is something that we are seeing it happen very rapidly at BlueSmart. You started out, I remember in 2019 itself, you had barely, I think, 70 cars, less than 100. And now you are looking at almost touching 2000 and going beyond. So in a matter of just about 2 to 3 years, in the traditional world, it will probably take a decade for a company to get to that scale. And you have done it in a matter of just a few years. So give us your sense of how you are scaling up.
So Sumant, so our logic was very clear from day one. We knew that India is a low asset ownership base. So if you see the data of India, only 30 Indians own cars out of 1,000 Indians. So it's 3% asset ownership. If we see data of China, which is our neighbor, 275 Chinese own cars out of 1,000 Chinese. So the asset ownership is 27% or 28%. This is for cars. And if we see US, where the Airbnb of mobility was born in 2009, it was born in the US because the asset ownership in the US is 800 cars per 1,000 people. And if you see UK has about 700 cars per 1,000 people. So we knew from day one is that Airbnb of mobility model can work in countries where the asset ownership is very high. We thought that since we come from renewable energy backgrounds, Karthikeya, myself, and Anmol, my co-founder, we have some renewable energy experience. And we thought that we'll apply the Pareto's principle. The Pareto's principle is very clear that you need less number of people to do more things. So we thought that if we now have to bring cars to the DCO model, the driver come owner model, this will take at least 2, 3, 4 decades for drivers to buy an electric car, find a charging station, then come on BlueSmart platform. It's a very 2 or 3 step process. So we figured out that a DFI route is the best route to grow. 5 DFIs in the world or 10 DFIs in the world which understand C of climate, R of renewable, E of electric mobility, M of mobility are the right partners to begin with. They can invest in electric cars as an asset class, lease those cars to BlueSmart, and thousands of them. So today BlueSmart has been able to secure the largest EV asset financing ever raised by anybody in India. We raised money from IREDA recently, $35 million. We are doing another deal with another large DFI. We'll be announcing it soon. So we, in a very short period of time, we have got $100 million of EV asset financing on the supply side, using the Pareto's principle. And again, now we continue to increase our EV asset financing, where large DFIs are taking risks or investing in electric cars, and BlueSmart platform is generating. And since we are a full stack platform, we generate rides, we allocate rides, and we complete rides. So we are a full stack platform, unlike the competition, which is merely an aggregator connecting customer with driver, driver with customer, and taking some brokerage or commission out of it. We're a full stack platform. So because of a business model and fundamental founding tenets are different with a supply side innovation, we were able to scale fast.
I just got a question on WhatsApp for you, in fact, Puneet. The fact that there is no startup who is making electric vehicles in a four-wheeler format in India. And so the scalability on that count is not that high. We know that they are constrained by capacities. Does that harm you in any way? The fact that they are all going slightly a little easy. The market leaders are not into electric vehicles anymore. We know Tata is very aggressive, but others are not really in the game. Is that hampering you? Would you have liked to have a startup in making vehicles as well?
So I think that gives us tremendous confidence that Tata is, in fact, they raised $1.2 billion at a $10 billion valuation. I think that's great. I think great for Karthikeya, great for Ravi Kiran, great for ourselves, that Tata Electric Mobility as a startup today raised $1 billion from TPG Growth from Rice Fund at a valuation of $10 billion. And these are just early days. They haven't started scratching the surface as yet. But as they dig deeper, they'll be able to supply 800,000 cars to BlueSmart going forward. Currently, they're supplying about nearly 400 cars to BlueSmart. And with their help and supply, BlueSmart's entire fleet will scale to 4,000 cars, which also means what BEST took 25 years to build their fleet of 4,250 buses in Bombay. Bombay has 4,250 BST buses. It took BST 25 years to build that fleet. BlueSmart will equal that fleet in 1 year's time. So that's in terms of scale, and that's a good number. And also one of the largest mobility companies in the world operating in London also today has 4,000 EVs on the road. So the largest EV operation in any city in the world is in London, where there are 4,000 cars plying on the road. So I don't think so. I am so worried about the manufacturing part in India. As more and more people understand the E of EV and the C of charging, I'm sure more and more manufacturers will start manufacturing electric cars. As of now, somebody has to lead and somebody has to follow. So that leader today is Tata Motors, and they're all followers going to follow them. And the market is for everybody to come forward and manufacture. So we wish everybody the best for manufacturing, and BlueSmart will bring on board thousands of cars from them.
Somebody has to lead and somebody has to follow.
Yeah.
Karthikeya, right now, some of the largest companies in India are oil marketing companies, the Indian Oils, the BPCLs, the Reliance of the world. But in a future where we will have mostly electric vehicles, it will probably be charging companies that will become big, because you will be providing the fuel that drives all these vehicles. How big is the opportunity? And do you think there is a need for many more players to come in?
So yeah, I think Suman, this is a very, very interesting or very poignant question here. That how big is the opportunity, right? Now people do ask us, how big is this e-mobility business? So we say, okay, you just take the number, pick the number, and it is there. The reason is that I would like to quote, one of the famous statement from a CEO of European car company. He said, well, 100 years ago when we started designing and manufacturing cars, we didn't build highways, we didn't build refineries, we didn't build petrol pumps or network petrol pumps. This was the job of somebody else. Now that somebody else are people like us, for example, who are enabling one of the part of the EV ecosystem is EV charging or reliable EV charging network, so to say. Now, to give a perspective, India has close to around 70,000 petrol pumps. And I have not, at least in my experience for the last 20 years, I have not stand or waiting in a queue for probably more than a couple of minutes to get my turn to fill my petrol or diesel in the car. Now, if you just extrapolate that number, an electric vehicle will not be charged in a couple of or a few seconds or a couple of minutes. It will definitely have a time like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So if you just multiply the number of petrol pumps, so you will probably require at least 500,000 charging hubs in India. Each of them will 10 points. So we are talking about somewhere around 5 million points. Now, 5 million points itself is a close to a $50 billion opportunity in terms of capex. Now, that number will not come from one single entity. It may come from, let's say, 5 or 10 different entities. Currently, there are numerous startups in this space. Even the existing companies, large companies wanting to or itching to get into this and trying to figure out that model as well. So what we built as ChargeZone was not to take just a charging for intra or city-based mobility. We rather started focusing on building intercity travel. Yeah, because people will ask us, who is the biggest competitor of ChargeZone? And I say it's home charging is the biggest competitor, right? Because 80% or 90% of the time you're going to charge at home, or what you call as a destination charging at your offices or corporate campuses where you drive to work. So I think it is, at the end of the day, the market is humongous. To give a number here, in order to enable, let's say, 10,000 electric buses in the country, you need to put $100 million only in charging infra. Now, the charging infra includes power infra as well. Yeah. Similarly, if you want to enable, let's say, if Blue Smart needs to enable 20,000 electric cars, for example, then to enable 20,000 electric cars, it will require anything between $100 and $150 million in terms of the overall capex for EV charging. Now, if you look at the stack numbers, we are not talking about few thousand EVs in the country, right? It will be multiple of them. Yeah. For example, one of the thought processes, India can have at least 10 to 15,000 electric buses added year on year. It means that you don't buy new electric diesel buses, forget the replacement, but just the addition can be electric buses. Similarly for cars as well, similarly for three-wheelers, two-wheelers, and so on. So if so the number, I think what government also has kept in mind, is says, can we have 30% of the new vehicles sold by 2030 be electric? Now, that is a very practical number to scale. I won't say that it's a difficult number or an easy number. Very practical, because it means that every third vehicle or probably every fourth vehicle will be an electric vehicle or alternative fuel vehicle, for example. So there is no dearth in terms of opportunity or the market size. It's all about the right product packaging from the EV perspective, including the battery and telematics and electronics, and software and all. And on the charging infra side, it is not just a brick and mortar. It's not just hardware. It's a combination of hardware plus software plus services plus the new idea. I mean, it's age-old idea anyways, but a renewable energy integration, energy storage backup, and so on and so forth. So that probably sums up the numbers, and probably running billion into probably $500 million year on year only on EV charging infra, so to say. Yeah.
So the opportunity is obviously very, very big, because you are not only selling vehicles, you're also providing the fuel. So it's oil industry plus automobile industry combined will be the industry of the future. But Ravi Kiran, if I come to you, one point that always comes up is that we have generally seen startups do very well in very, very new age sectors. So technology-led, software-led sectors, that is where startups have done very, very well. This is probably the first time that there is some disruption happening due to startups in an industry which is over 100-year-old, and where hardware also plays a very, very big role. Now, how do you see this transition going forward? Because the legacy companies, they will not give up in a hurry. They will also play the role. They will also learn software and coding, and they will also try to adapt. And we also have so many startups already there, and there will be more. What happens next? What happens 5 years down the line? Who wins, and who do you think will actually end up losing out?
Yeah. So, I mean, you rightly said, nobody is going to be stationary in this space. There is a hype curve, right? Gartner has its hype curve, and I think e-mobility is very much on the hype curve now. Everybody wants to be in this space. Everybody wants to do something, not because it is only a hype, because there is an opportunity which each one of us are seeing. I think even in the panel, as you see, all of us are saying there is an opportunity for different kinds of players. So digital tech companies, there will be many who will come as the time goes. In the past, there are players in different countries who have succeeded in what they have done. But India will be a hotbed. India is a hotbed of software tech innovation. So there will be a lot of companies who will enter this space. Now, looking at traditional companies, what would they do vis-a-vis the new age companies? We should just look for parallels in other industries. What happened when you look at an IT world, from an infrastructure which was built, telecom world where the infrastructure was built. Not everybody went into a full stack eventually. So there were horizontal layers got built over a period of time. In the beginning, everybody did what they want to do. If you look at most of this industry, it is split between specialized companies who serve a specific need in each one of these layers, whether it is on the software side, the equipment infrastructure side, the service side. Eventually, if you look at most of these players, they ended up being service providers, because you need to look at many different aspects of ensuring the service is delivered. But then you procure different elements from different players, whether it's hardware, whether it is software, and others. So those industries matured over a period of time. And that's what we believe will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Because if you look at the IT, the networking equipment, which is put in place for our internet to work or the telecom to work, there are very clear layers built there. The hardware players are very specialized. The software players who are OSS, BSS players are very specialized. And each one is a multi-billion-dollar industry globally right now. And I feel it's the same way it will play out when we go forward. There will be very specialized players in each one of them. There will be service providers who consume these specializations from each one of those horizontal layers and build their business. See, at the end of the day, we need a fleet to be successful. We need a charging service provider to be successful. But not everybody needs to build everything. So there will be horizontal layers which will get built, which is where new age companies will play a role. And the larger companies may not be building everything. They will actually procure from the experts who understand that space very well. They don't need multiple players, or they don't need to build everything. That will happen over a period of time. Even if you look at the smartphone industry or any industry, not everybody is building everything, and not everybody is an Apple. I think always there is, even Apple buys components from everybody else. So there will be components from different people. And that is where opportunity lies for small and medium startups and enterprises to create value at each one of them, to be focused, to be niche and create your value there, not try to do everything. I think that's a position we always believe in, that we need to be good at what we do. And that is irreplaceable. That's our moat, and that's what everybody would.
Correct. Nobody is God. We cannot do all by ourselves. Any which way collaboration, I think, is key.
Exactly. Ecosystem. Yeah.
Yes. We've got a steady stream of questions, and there is one question that pops up, and it's been asked in two different versions. And this is for you, Puneet. When you talk about EVs and they becoming curbing our oil imports, but at the same time, we will also have to import lithium. And as we know, commodity prices are on a high, lithium prices are shooting through the roof. How will it play out? I mean, is it necessarily a good thing that, yes, you are going to replace oil imports with lithium imports?
Lithium, Sumant, also has something called storage. So once you get them, you also have a life to it. Petrol, once you consume, is gone. So you need to import it on a daily basis or on a monthly basis. So it's a daily consumption commodity where you keep importing and then it's gone. In lithium, for that way, is an investment. Just like how you import solar panels or you import wind blades. So lithium has density of storage. So the lithium batteries last for normally 3 to 4 years. They are also in our mobile phones. And we believe that now India is taking steps to go and identify reserves overseas and invest in them and get them to India. So lithium will play a very important part in storage. So I don't think so that you can compare lithium with oil straight away, because they are two different things. One has no storage value, and one is a storage product. So that's one. And also in terms of if you see the total cost of import, transportation is the single biggest contributor to the import bill of oil and petrol. So if transportation shifts to electric and we have more and more lithium reserves overseas, where India makes investments and gets them to India to manufacture batteries in India, that will also save a lot of billions of dollars for the government. So that's our take, that you cannot really compare lithium storage density and lithium life of 4 to 8 years versus petrol, which is replenished on daily basis.
I think it's an important point, and we tend to forget that in petrol, you import some petrol, refine it, put it in a pump, and then you use it 10 liters and it's gone, and then you have to again import 10 liters. Whereas in lithium, you make a battery and it holds true for almost 10 years, and only on newer vehicles would you need to import. And there's also the recyclability aspect of it. When petrol, when it is gone. Whether that lithium can be used in storage solutions, other storage solutions for solar, or even for your inverters in the home, before it actually becomes completely waste. And even then, it will probably not be entirely waste. You can recycle some part of it, and maybe some people say that 95% of it can be completely recycled and brought back to life. That is not possible in fossil fuels, unfortunately. So that is a very valid point. But having said that, there's been an increase of almost 400% in the price of lithium itself. And even Bloomberg NEF had said that this year, probably we will see an increase in price of battery pack, which we had never really factored in beforehand. We always thought that battery prices will keep falling and there will be a price parity between petrol and electric vehicles very soon. It looks like it can get delayed a bit. Could that be a major roadblock?
I don't think so. Again, Suman, we also saw the same curve in solar. So when the demand for solar really picked up, there was a sudden surge in the prices of solar panels, but then again came down because a lot of people started investing into it. So if we see India also now announcing its battery policy, we'll see a lot of gigawatts of solar power, gigawatts of battery plants being now set up in India in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. So we really believe that going forward in the long term, like even Karthikeya was saying, long term, we really see steady prices. The prices only going to go south and south forever. So I really see that it's a challenge of 1 or 2 more years, because India has suddenly seen massive demand for EVs, because India is like a sleeping giant. It wakes up one fine day and realizes that we have to shift. And the shift is so sudden because, all these two-wheelers which are requiring so many lithium-ion batteries, and obviously two-wheelers are going to take a bigger lead because the cost of two-wheelers are lower. So we'll see thousands of two-wheelers being manufactured, which are battery enabled, which are BEVs, actually battery electric vehicles, because of which there's a sudden demand of lithium in India. But over the next 2 or 3 years, we really believe that will become steady and the cost will come down. But if you see the total cost of ownership today also, it makes sense. We only entered this business because we knew that TCO makes sense today. It's not tomorrow. TCO is favorable today. It'll even get better tomorrow with each passing day.
Right. We have some more very interesting questions, some of them for Karthikeya as well. One is, do you see, and this is Himadri asking this, do you see fuel cell vehicle as a competition for your business model? And the other is just an observation from Akash, who says that before penetration of electric vehicles, we should focus more on charging stations both in rural and urban areas. This is very similar to what you also said, that you need to set up charging network and electric vehicles will follow. But fuel cell vehicles, is that competition?
Yeah, I think a fuel cell has been a very famous topic for last 20 years now, right? It's more older than an electric vehicle topic, actually. Yeah. Now, if you really look at the fuel cell, or even for that matter, even the hydrogen mobility being talked about, which in conjunction with fuel cell per se, there is one need to really deep dive on the value chain or energy value chain, as Ravi Kiran mentioned, in terms of how you manage this energy cycles or the distribution across the value chain, right from manufacturing of a vehicle all the way up to when the wheels hit on the road. So when you compare the cost of ownership between an electric vehicle versus an FCEV, there is a difference of almost 40 to 45%. Again, in a fuel cell vehicle, what we are doing is you are actually, using electricity to produce hydrogen, then running your fuel cell electric vehicle, which again produces the electricity, then runs your motor. So it is a twice hop over of electricity. In an electric vehicle, right from the grid, you charge the battery and it runs your motor. So just a few very simple layman terms, fuel cell is twice the hopping of the electricity, which means that you lose the energy curve in terms of losses and the efficiency. So in a way, the fuel cell, what we see, or we will probably come in with a what you call as a heavy vehicle mobility, the commercial vehicle, like trucks, for example. And so there are far better candidates compared to, let's say, two-wheeler or three-wheeler, or even a small compact car or a sedan or crossover. So at the end of the day, we believe that going forward, these things will coexist, because the idea is all about going net zero. If you recently see one of the report by McKinsey, it says that $275 trillion of physical assets are required, in terms of new investment over the next 20 to 30 years if the world has to be net zero. Now, so just like petrol, diesel, and then CNG coexisted, right? Similarly, going forward, we'll believe that these fuels plus the EV plus the FCEVs and all will coexist, in the times to come.
Right. Ravi Kiran, there is a question for you, slightly provocative, but this is from Sandeep. He asks that if you don't have a captive car fleet, how do you get the data? And isn't BlueSmart in a better position to capitalize data and battery AI management opportunity than your company? I think partly it is a little unfounded, because not like you said, not everybody can do everything. So BlueStart will also probably need somebody to completely churn and analyze the data. So that could be part of the answer. But let you say it and not me.
Sure. I think thanks, Suman. So Sandeep, answering your question, I think there is already an assumption that data is of a particular way. So we need to understand that in the ecosystem, there are a multitude of data. The data coming from end users, data coming from charging systems, data coming from vehicles, powertrain, data coming from batteries, data could be from fleet management system, data could be by your own vehicle could be giving data, because all of them are connected vehicles now, whether it's a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler, all of these vehicles also give out data. So data is at multiple level. I've been part of many discussions where we are even challenging and questioning, saying, who owns this data, by the way? And I like your question, because yes, if you own a fleet, you tend to own a set of these data of your own. But at the same time, remember what's happening within the vehicle. The vehicle OEM owns the data. What's happening within the charger OEMs own the data. What's happening in a charging network. Now, like ChargeZone owns the data because it's their data. So each one has their own data, and there are multiple players who own the data. We are a B2B platform. We don't claim, we don't own anybody's data. We always provide the technology to use that data. So what happens is, for instance, we are already working with one of the world's largest vehicle OEM to help them with an energy problem within the vehicles inside. It is not about anything else. We are working with some of the leading charging vendors to help them with the charging data coming in. And we are providing the technology platforms, and we are a B2B licensee. We get technology licensed and we get our license. We again don't claim the data, but at the same time, there's a beautiful business model which enables us to monetize it based on our technology layers, helping them to solve their problem. And like I'm saying, I mean, we're already working with some of the large vehicle OEMs globally. And yeah, of course, in sometime in future, we would probably work with BlueSmart to solve their problem if there is one which they haven't solved it, or with even Karthikeya if there is something which they have not solved it. So we are always open as a B2B platform, and we don't compete with any of them. We just remain as a B2B platform.
So like we often say, data is the new oil, and it is fascinating that just about, I think, 2 decades back, there was no data. It has come out of nowhere, and now everybody is hankering over data and trying to analyze how it helps you for your business going forward. Now, Puneet, one of the challenges that some startups face is that somebody else can come tomorrow with probably much more funding and replicate your business model. Now, how do you insulate yourself from a Me Too from tomorrow? Because we have seen that happen in some other sectors.
In our case, Sumant, I think if that would have been the case, there was no need of BlueSmart. So there are other companies which are out there which have more capital than BlueSmart, and they are listed also. One of them is listed on a global platform in the US. So we fundamentally believe that innovation wins over balance sheets, and that has been the history of the West also. So innovation always wins over balance sheets. This is what my learning has been. So we are seeing today mobility totally getting disrupted in India. So we are the last entrant in ride hailing in India, but we're the first entrant with innovation on supply side, consumer centric approach. You may have a larger fleet of aeroplanes. You are Air India, but you don't have the quality standards of Vistara. So you need to add innovation, customer centric approach, and capital. If you can connect 3 dots, then you can probably build BlueSmart. It won't be only a game of just capital, because there are other companies which came before BlueSmart, and maybe they came 10 years before us, but they're finding it quite difficult to adapt to better quality service. They are finding it very difficult to adapt to innovation, and this is the same reason we thought we should find BlueSmart. And we should not first go and teach them how to build BlueSmart. So we in fact started on the platform of one of those companies only. When you and I met in June 19, we launched on the platform of one of the ride-hailing platforms, and we understood that they are not customer-oriented. They lack innovation and technology in India. They're a global platform with a focus on their own home country, and they were not focused on India as a market opportunity, and where Airbnb or mobility model will not work. So we decided to disrupt the entire business with supply side innovation built for India, customer centric approach built for India. And also, like Karthikeya mentioned, you have to have the entire EV ecosystem approach. We are born electric. The other ride hailing platforms are not born electric. They are migrating, transitioning, transforming to an electric platform. We are born electric. So our underlying proprietary technology, which connects our supply side, which is our largest fleet of electric cars, with our customers via the platform, is also very, very innovative. That really takes a lot to do. It took us about 3 or 4 years of deep research, looking into various global models before starting BlueSmart. So yes, we encourage other platforms also to start mini BlueSmarts. Like Elon also said 10 years back that other companies also should probably become like Tesla. It'll be great for the environment. We want all ride-hailing platforms, scooter platforms, mobility platforms to go fully electric. It'll be great for the nation. It'll be a great dedication to the nation. But to build BlueSmart, you'll have to connect several dots in the ecosystem, and that is we believe is a big moat for us, because we've been able to build the largest charging infra partnership in India with the largest energy company of India. Today, the partnership on the charging infra front with GeoBP is also historic. Our supply side agreement is also historic. Our App Store rating of 4.9, over 1.5 million trips, over 50 million kilometers. We don't know of any company in the world which has covered 50 million clean kilometers with an absolute rating of 4.9. That just goes to show about speak a lot about volumes about our customer-centric product that we have built. So all these things are fundamental founding tenets of BlueSmart, which are getting validated with each passing year, with each passing quarter. And that's very difficult to replicate.
Right. We are in fact looking out for the next Tesla of the world. Who knows? Probably 5 or 10 years from now, somebody would be saying we are looking out for the next BlueSmart. You never know. Karthik, there are questions about how battery swapping could be a challenge to you. Very similar to how somebody asked about fuel cell vehicles.
Right.
There could be other innovations that can also crop up in the charging space. This is an evolving era. Technology will play a huge role. The batteries could themselves change. There will be solid state batteries. There will be other innovations. How do you insulate yourself from this very fast evolving tech space?
Right. So I think it's at the end of the day, any space, it always there is a disruption in terms of evolution of technology and things. But sometimes you got to see also from the lens of engineering as well. So there is something called engineering and there is something called technology, and we tend to mix both of them, right? And if I increase the rating of an air conditioner in my office, is an engineering change. It is not a technology change. Yeah. So in EV charging space, we have figured out two things very clearly. Because you deliver electrons and electricity to the vehicle, our scope of any EV charging in the world is only up to the socket of the vehicle. Yeah. You have this little 3-pin socket in your office, which has been there for 100 years and never disrupted. And nobody wants to really disrupt that particular part as well, right? So in case of EV charging space, there are three possible technology verticals which are evolving very rapidly. One is the plug-in charging or fast charging, as we call it. Second is battery swapping, and third is the wireless induction charging going forward. And amongst the three, the plug-in charging, because of all its merits in terms of safety, reliability, has worked very well for vehicles like cars or electric buses. Battery swapping has a very different role to play because of the cost of ownership of the battery. Because when you are riding a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler, and you swap a battery at a particular or a battery exchanger, for example, then you are not owning the battery, which also means the cost of ownership is much less. But then there are also other demerits also, such as wear and tear of the connectors, the risk associated, the fire risk, and so on and so forth. And last but not least is a wireless charging or wireless induction charging that will come in. But yes, a plug-in charging, where we specialize currently, has been there for the last 15 years now. And it has evolved in terms of engineering and less of technology, because it's a very something very similar. I said, the 3-pin plug in your office. So we have kind of insulated in terms of any major tech change, but rather we focus on the engineering upgrade, the software integration, and very importantly, the other things upstream that we do is such as renewable energy integration, such as bringing energy storage for a reliability of EV charging. I mean, you are driving to a petrol pump, so-called EV charging pump, owned by ChargeZone, and then I cannot sell that. Well, the petrol is not available today, right? So there are so many other things to be bought in terms of purely. It's not innovative, to be honest. It is a purely nothing but engineering additions, or equipment additions, or the process additions which are required over there. Plus, there are significant software layers like Ravi and his team are developing in terms of connecting the devices, vehicles, people together. So I guess both upstream and downstream level, there's so much to do. But fortunately, on the fast plug-in charging, if you put it right in the center of the entire discussion, then it is now insulated in terms of the tech part and standardization, the regulation that attaches it. And coming to battery swapping and wire induction, I think government is still working upon the regulations right now. As you know, battery swap regulation, the policy which was expected actually this quarter by Niti Aayog, has been deferred to December this year. But I hope all the stakeholders will put the act together and come with a policy and which make it very, very viable and reliable for two-wheeler or three-wheeler space. Yeah.
It's a challenge for regulators as well, because the evolution is so fast. I think we need startups in the government too. But Ravi Kiran, one big challenge is grid stability. We need smart grids. We need a lot of software inputs in our electricity generation as well, so that whenever there is a surge, and now the surge, I mean, as of now, we know what are the electric devices that we use. And we have mapped it out pretty well that yes, there will be a peak in the summer during 3 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon when the factories are also running and offices are also running, the kids are back from school. But once the EVs come on the road, the peaks will be of a very, very different kind of a variety and at very odd hours. Now, to handle that, the grid needs to be smart. What kind of a role do software companies play in this? And do you think that's an opportunity for somebody like you?
Yeah, Suman, thanks a lot for this question. I was trying to bring this point somewhere, so thanks for bringing it up. So as a digital platform, technology platform, that's one of our main products, which is what I said by keeping it operational with many of our customers. In fact, we're working with some of the leading companies of ensuring how the load is protected or the grid is protected. So we look at it at multiple points. You look at it as behind the meter, at the grid. So there are multiple solutions which are built, which is both hardware and software combined, because there are some cases where at the edge, you really want a quick response. So sometimes software sitting on the cloud may not be the right solution. Something at the edge might be the right solution. But there are smart chargings which are already enabled for EV charging profiles. There are load management managed at the edge, which at the meter, which we are managing. There are some coming from the grid. Now, of course, when we start talking about grid, the dynamic tariffing, energy mix, we are looking at what kind of load balancing can be done on the grid. That will require the grid to be smarter. I think already in India, we are starting to talk about it, but the behind the meter and at the meter, we can do even now. We don't need anything else to do it. Grid will take some time. We believe it will take some time before it gets real in India. But in other markets, we are already experiencing this, and we are trying to work at all the three levels, where we are looking at how the chargers can protect the vehicle, chargers can build the buildings, power input there. So all these three are happening. There are some which will be purely software only solutions. There are some which will be a mix of edge hardware and software. But this is something India has to plan in the next 1 to 2 years. I mean, we are building infrastructure. We heard from both Puneet and Karthikeya how infrastructure is getting built. I think this is an understanding which everybody who's involved in the ecosystem need to be aware of, because in India and also in many markets, grid is very sensitive. So I think, how do you do that? And also there is a new concept which many countries are looking at, how to keep the energy mix or charging based on the energy mix. Based on the energy mix, can I decide when to charge, when not to charge? I think these specialized use cases will start to happen in the next few years. And in India, we'll have to gear up to it. And I'm quite sure on the grid companies are getting their systems ready with a couple of standardized interfaces, which will allow software systems to do these. And you will see many of these come in the coming years. And this is how the digital platforms evolve. And we are looking at problem number one now, but as the day goes, there are multiple problems to be solved.
Right. I'm getting a sense that you guys are just about starting out and not in the middle of the journey, but probably at the start of it. And it will be quite some journey going forward. We are almost on the fag end of our allotted 1 hour. But one last question to each of you, and which is the one big challenge that you face that you need to be wary of, and how do you think you are addressing it? And it could be different challenges for each of you. Starting with you, Puneet, which is the one major challenge you're facing, and how are you trying to address it?
I think you brought it up, in one of your questions on the supply side, that we could have scaled faster if we would have had, recourse to more EVs on the road, because on the demand side, we have built a very consumer-centric brand. So we need more EVs that we can bring on the platform, and we are constrained a little bit there. But my bigger challenge is not that eventually will play out. I'm really worried about our future. If today India does not shift to electric, we have a very bad future in terms of cities are getting congested, polluted, so much of dependence on oil imports. I think that shift has to really happen, with the government now coming forward, and the FM said also that they should create these low emission zones in cities where you should not have internal combustion engine cars plying on the roads of Delhi NCR, and there should be only EV zones. I think that is something that India has to make a move, following London, where they've created these ultra low emission zones, where if you want to drive your non-EV cars, you have to pay carbon tax, and you have to pay about 27.5 pounds per day in terms of ULEZ charge, and in terms of congestion charge. That needs to be implemented in mega cities of India. That's my big worry and keeps me awake at night, that the city councils, the state governments, and the cities have to step up. and follow what global cities are doing for a better tomorrow. Because over the next 2 or 3 years, we'll see this AQI problem really worsening with each passing year. And because I'm worried about the future generations, if we don't clean up this mess, then the future generations of India will not really like what we are doing right now. So we have to do it for a better tomorrow.
Yeah, we don't know how much damage AQI already caused us. It's very difficult to quantify, but definitely it is impacting us. Karthikeya, your thoughts on which is the challenge that you are facing and how you are trying to address it?
Right. Anyway, I think just to add what Puneet mentioned in terms of the environmental consciousness and the regulations therein. Let me just come on the industrial side of it. So one of the challenges in terms of the EV charging networks is to implement or to execute the investment and installation of these EV charging stations. And it is not just one stakeholder who is involved. There are multiple of them, and one of them is primarily the grid, that is DISCOMs, and the other regulations that drives the DISCOM policies and their day-to-day processes. I'm not talking about high-level policies by central government. I'm talking about on-the-ground SOPs, which are dictated by DISCOM. They're also keeping in mind the DISCOM is still largely regulated. So we are talking about kind of deregulated and all, but it's still the DISCOMs belonging to the various state-owned entities. So one of the biggest challenge that we have as an EV charging company is the interface with DISCOM, which can be smoothened, which can be bought into simplification of the process, approvals and so on, which helps to speed up the rollout of EV charging stations in the country. That's one biggest challenge that we are facing. We hope that will ease out in coming months. Thank you.
Yes, and this is something that we discussed in the grid part, which Ravi Kiran also answered. We need the government to also shape in a little bit on all fronts. Ravi Kiran, last words from you. Which is the challenge you want to be solved?
Yeah, mine is very specific to not really EV, but something on the software side. India is a software capital for everything on IT and software. It's a boon. At the same time, it's a big challenge for us, because everyone in India thinks software is free because it is done in India. So the price associated with software is a big challenge. At the same time, it's always a belief that if it is done in India, anybody can do it. This is a challenge and a myth we are trying to fight against, saying we are a world-class product company. We are not an IT services company. We are a product company. And we have got validation in 7 different countries where we are rated as one of the top 5 in the world, which is very good ratings we get in every country. But in India, we always get a challenge that software is seen as free. And I really want more appreciation from the ecosystem that there is a role for software and it's not free. It adds value in the ecosystem. And that's when it will also encourage a lot more companies to come up, because India is going to be a huge opportunity in the next 5 to 10 years. It's not one company playing this. There will be tens of companies playing this. So there should be an appreciation of value and also ability to appreciate that value and provide the value for it. I mean, money monetizing in a way. So I think that's one of the challenge we see, that being from India, we are always seen as a free software. I think that's something which has to change, and that will help the ecosystem in a very big way.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Change is the only constant, and it is very clear startups are leading the change in the mobility space. Watch out for Blue Smart, Numo City, as well as Charge Zone. They will be all around us very soon, if not already. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.